and welcome to Smaulgld's Indian silver import update for the month of January 2017. Indian silver imports fell again in January. Indian silver imports fell 44% in January 2017. Indian silver imports were 363 tons, down from 649 tons in January of 2016. Indian silver imports, however, were up slightly from December 2016 when India imported 286 tons. So far, the Indian rupee demonetization and war on gold has not yet led to greater silver demand in India, and part of that reason is Indians have had less ability to purchase gold and silver jewelry or silver ornaments because they have not had access to cash. Now, prior to the demonetization, as we'll see in a few charts in a minute, Indians weren't buying silver anyway, even when they had the cash, and I suspect that's in part because the price of silver had risen and they had purchased a lot of, or imported a lot of, and then purchased a lot of silver in prior years, especially as the price was heading down from 2012 to 2015. Let's take a look at some of the events that impact Indian silver. So first of all, it was reported yesterday that the Indians had just completed the world's largest solar power plant in the world. If you click on this link, if you go to the website, I'll put a link below on Smaulgld.com, you can see a slideshow on this massive new Indian solar power plant. Now, we had reported on this plant being built, I think it was 2014 or 2015 in our special India and Silver. And at the time we wrote that this large silver power plant in India was going to use, just this plant alone, 20 million ounces of silver a year. So of course, yeah, 2015 in January, we did that Indian silver report, which you can check out at the link there. But one of the reasons we've had lower probably silver imports, but doesn't account for all of it, is that 200 million ounces of silver imported a year. That's about 622 tons, or about 51 tons a month annually. That's probably no longer being imported to support the construction of that particular Indian solar power plant. But if you could see, 600 a month, it's not, I mean, 50 tons a month or 622 tons a year is not a significant portion, even of last year's relatively low Indian silver imports. So you see, if you take off 50, it's not that big of a deal to have done so. So you really can't blame the decrease in Indian silver imports on the completion of the Indian solar power plant, because while it was a significant amount of silver, it was 50 tons a month that are probably no longer being brought in to service that particular solar power plant. Now, India does have other solar endeavors going on, so again, they'll probably be bringing in more silver to support that. But solar power it's a decent chunk of silver demand, but it's not an overwhelming amount. I think the Silver Institute said that I think they ranked at about 80, 90 million ounces a year projected of silver to be used in solar panels. Now, the reason it's not growing exponentially, and by the way, that's about 10% of annual silver mining production. But the reason that silver for solar panels is not increasing as fast as the building of the solar panels across the world is because they've managed to use less and less silver in the construction of these panels. And so now they don't need as much silver per panel, and that's why you don't see this massive increase in, you see an increase, but you just don't see a doubling or tripling of silver demand for solar. Anyway, you can see last year, here's the chart for 2016. You had some months where very little silver was being brought in. There's your pitch to donate to Smaulgld. I do appreciate that when people donate, either via Bitcoin or PayPal or becoming a Patreon. You can buy your silver through Smaulgld as well. through BGASC, Golden Eagle Coin, JM Bullion, Money Metals Exchange, and our friends over at SD Bullion at the links on the Smaulgld site and also at the links below this YouTube video. If you do purchase through Smaulgld, you pay no more no less than if you visited the sites directly, and Smaulgld gets a small commission. Not investment advice to buy or sell gold or silver, but if you're interested in doing so, please consider supporting the Smaulgld site by making your precious metals purchases through the site. Let's continue. So, Indian imports were massive in 2015, and then they fell 58% in 2016. And again, the reason they rose in 2015 wasn't because of that solar power plant. Sure, they've got probably an additional 50 tons a month coming in to support that power plant, but in 2015 they imported 8,500 tons of silver, a massive amount, and they fell to 3,500 tons in 2016. Now, one of the reasons also for the decrease in 2016 was there was a not only rising prices, we saw a significant rise off the bottom at the end of 2015, going into 2016, where silver rose from the 14s all the way up to 20. It hit $21 an ounce in 2016, in the middle of the year. So that definitely curbed silver demand and imports. There was a national jewelry strike that began as a protest against the Indian government's institution of a sales tax on gold, and then higher prices slowed Indian silver imports. Now, there are reports that in February and March of 2017 that jewelers are beginning to restock their gold inventories and also their silver inventories, and that makes sense since Indians are now starting to return to normal with their cash situation. They've managed to exchange their old rupees for new rupees. Some of them open new bank accounts. So now they're in a position where they do have pent-up demand, and they can indeed at least purchase the gold and silver at the jewelers, whereas before they had no means to do so. Gold imports were also down last year. Let's take a look at the historic silver imports. India is an odd country in that it has massive gold demand, probably the most in the world over the last 20 years, and very large silver demand, and it really doesn't have much in the way of mining of either. It does have light silver mining production. It has virtually no gold mining production. So it all has to be satisfied, that demand, by imports or scrap. Now, scrap basically, as a supply dries up when the price goes down. People do not empty their drawers, their china cabinets where they keep their silver utensils and silver ornaments when the price is low. They may do that when the price rises, but so scrap gold and scrap silver generally don't come as much to market when the price is lower. So the demand has to be met. Current demand, when the price is lower, rises. The demand rises, so that demand has to be met through greater imports. And you can see, I think the biggest 3 years right here, when the price was the lowest, 2013, 14, and 15. Then last year, as the price rose, it went down, and you had the other issues like the tax and the jewelry strike. And this year, we're not really off to much of a start. I mean, it's better than the end of the year. Let's take a look at the, there you go. So this is a 3-year chart, 2.5 years, 14, 15, 16, 17. And you can see this is February 2000 and January 2017. It's higher than the prior months. I mean, they're making a big deal out of it that it's 2 or 3 times bigger than August of last year. But still, if you go to the other full years, August through December of 2015, most of the months were well over 600 tons a month, sometimes twice that, 1,200 a month. So there's not yet been the boost in Indian silver import, and which translates to almost 1-to-1 Indian silver demand. So we're not really there yet with Indian. The reason Indian silver imports are important is that they do take up a bunch of the overall silver demand in the world. Let's take a look at it. Here you go. So if you've got 800 to 900 million ounces a year worth of global silver mining production, and you've got massive 2015, for example, silver demand through imports from India. You got like a third of the overall mining production, which doesn't leave much left. Now, also, the other thing you got to consider with that 867 number here, there's like 100 million ounces that are coming from China that are included in that number, but that doesn't go out to the rest of the world. So basically, of the amount of silver that's available for the rest of the world, in 2015, India was taking up 35-40%. So they were basically just their own demand were taking up 40% of the global silver mining production, which is staggering because most silver is a just-in-time commodity, meaning they're not stockpiles, vast stockpiles of silver, other than what happens to be an individual's possession that has to then come to market one by one. They're not the same thing as where central banks hold stockpiles of gold or there's stockpiles somewhere else. Basically, silver demand annually is generally met via, for the most part, that annual silver mining production, whereas gold is largely met through existing stocks that get rotated and not rotated but recycled, whereas silver gets a lot of it gets used in industry and it doesn't really get recovered and put back into circulation. So most of the gold that's ever been mined in the world is still kind of available in some way, shape, or form for people to buy or to use, but most of the silver that's been mined has been kind of thrown to the wind. It's in waste dumps. It's been lost. It doesn't have the same percentage of availability that the mined gold has and has had. So when a particular entity or group of entities have big silver demand, you then have a circumstance where they're eating into and their requirements are coming from the current mining supply. So my thought has always been that if, and just because I've always thought it doesn't make it correct, but my thought has always been and still is that you're more likely to see a shortage develop in silver than in gold, because gold in many respects can be substituted through monetary means. There's many Western traders, many Western holders of gold are more than happy to be satisfied with a contract or with cash settlement. You cannot do that with silver. If there is demand for silver for industry, it cannot be satisfied by saying, sorry, we don't have the silver that you ordered, but how about we pay you instead the amount worth in silver and cash? Or you just cannot run a solar panel or electronic on a paper promise. You actually need the physical silver. So that's why I like to follow Indian silver imports, because they do take up a lot of silver, but recently they're taking up a lot less. And then if you go to the website, there's some other charts you could take a look at. Silver mining output by country. I think that's about it for this week. We will do the update tomorrow. We'll cover the Obamacare repeal failure by the Republican Party, Donald Trump, and well, you'll just have to wait and see. Talk to you tomorrow.